Hello everyone and welcome. Yes, my name is Arrowfire. Welcome back to another episode of Look Out and Shout. And we're finally getting around to this one. Today we are last reviewing Robot Toys RT-D01, bear with me here, Lord Venatagon. Why? It is Scorponok from Beast Wars. This is very nice, and we're actually getting a company doing Beast Wars character that's not Takara or Transart, RIP. Robot Toys are starting to tease a few other releases coming out, such as Tarantulas and Waspinator, and it's believed they're going to do a Legend scale and an MP scale as well. But we don't know too much more other than some CAD images or prototype images that have been released in the last couple of days. However, this one has been touted for a little while. It's nice to get one in hand. The box itself is nice, but then again I always say that. Nice artwork on the front, and you just about can see his beast mode on the back. Also saying that if you are 0 to 3 years old, you are going to be very sad. And of course, you too can pick up this figure from showzstore.com, where if you will be so kind, the next time you make a pre-order and or purchase, if you would please enter at the top of the homepage under support your favourite reviewer code, the code of FIRE1, FYRE1. Any points that you generate through your purchase are automatically shared to my account, which lead to purchases for things for the channel such as this. Thank you very much to everyone for their ongoing support. Inside the box comes the figure itself, along with a few accessories which we'll go through, instructions, no collector's card surprisingly. Without further ado, let's get on with the review. And there he is in his robot mode. First impressions, straight out of the box, very nice. Very good cartoon accuracy, representation here. Very good build of a figure. Very good handling. Very good articulation, just moving things into place as you get them out of the box, with a couple of early noticeable drawbacks, which we'll touch on later. But this was always going to be a difficult figure to do. Takara have shown that they have struggled, or at least taken their time, with some of the more complex transformation to figures. It's the alt modes that give them as much problem as anything else. Hence why, whilst Takara are doing a very good job, they are taking some time to complete some of the figures, particularly the Predacons. It's even harder still for a fairly upstart company, a new company, to come along and tackle someone like Scorponok. It doesn't necessarily carry the depth, you'll notice that, but for that aside, for what you're paying for it, it really is a good representation of a figure. It's possibly the right side. Scorponok does come across small, and I think you have to remind yourself that he is a small character. Maybe not as small as the Kingdom version, that deluxe size came out, that was very small. But he is a small character generally. I think they've got him just about right, certainly for cartoon representation and not the original toy. Let's get in for a closer look. It's going to be hard to get everything into shot because, as you can see, his tail arches quite a way up, but I can't get it any further down than that still. Now, I will say he balances really well. Now, it's not screaming die-cast, this figure. That shouldn't really come as a surprise. It's not a Fans Toys figure. It's not a heavy size of masterpiece, so it's quite light, but still, that's a fair bit of back kibble to hang. It's still a fair bit of weight, and the tension around the ankles and the hips do a job quite well. Now, I will point out this isn't the head that he comes with. Not fresh out of the box anyway. And you can see it's gone for a very stoic expression. The one he comes with is a bit more derpy, and I will say it's not fun changing them. Now, my co-host of That's Just Prime, a Beast Wars podcast, Carnage Creations, did do a review on this, and you can watch him take the head off that figure. But however, when I did so, from this head that he comes with, this has got quite a sort of derpy head on the go, but I do like the fact it has an opening and closing mouth, which I don't think Chris's version had on his. That's what it comes with. I took that head off, and one of these side talons, jaw, claws, whatever you want to say, broke off when I did so. Was a bit worried by that. It does clip back on, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if I've plugged a connection off by doing so, just yanked it off. Didn't think I was doing it too tight, but obviously I must have done. But that's the other head that he comes with. So he has a bit more of a derpier expression on the go. The grin or the smirk goes from either side of the mouth. It's what we see in the production shots. It's not my favourite, but that's the one he comes with nevertheless. But both sets of heads have this additional feature for an eye change, because I always try and remember whether Scorponok has orange eyes or red eyes. Well, in fact, he has both. And that's where this lovely feature comes in, if you can see it. Now, I'll quickly show you this one that he's got on. It's not the most reflective light on it, but you can see it's an orange eye visor, the jaw doesn't move, it looks pretty expressionate, but that's all there is. Now, if I move his tail back out of the way, top of his head will come open. You can see the interchangeable red and yellow. Pull down with your nail, rotate it round, and clip it back into place. And there he has a more red eye visor on the go. It's painted red, it's nice. But I will say, if I get the other head into shot, the red on here is quite a dead look, and this is where I think a battery comes in. Now, you could argue that this underside panel, rather than being a holder or connector, is a battery. But there's also one other accessory, which is this thing. And you're supposed to, I believe, because that is a battery, sort of magnetically touch it and the lights will come on. It doesn't work, at least not on mine. That was a pre-installed battery. It does look like a battery when you look at it from both sides as well. Very mini red golden disc. And there is the derpy face with the mouth open and the yellow eyes. Much more expressionate, even if I'm not too keen on the wider mouth. But it depends which way you want them. But if you want a bit more of a flat red eye look, you're probably better with the one he's got on rather than the dead eye look, which possibly should have been for a battery feature. Now you may be thinking the claws he comes with are a bit stubby. Well, they are really. This is led to believe that the early feedback was that when we saw the prototypes of this, that people were saying the claws look a bit small in not really keeping with the show or proportion to the body. But fear not, we have two more. Much larger, much more in keeping. If you want the smaller ones, they're absolutely fine. They do exactly the same functionality, they're just a little bit smaller. So open as such. The hip moving does kind of move back and forward a little bit, but broadly speaking, they do their job. They're fine, but if you want to change them, you pop them off on a ball joint, and there we go. That's more like it, isn't it? Bit more in keeping, bit more centerpiece attention, and when you open them up, he also comes with preloaded missiles. This was his other accessories, which I think they look really cool. They don't fire, of course, so you can't lose them down the back of the sofa. You can turn them either way if you want to have a bit of a side-on shot. You can do that as well. Just think there's a lot more to it. Gives a bit more expression to the character. I think these are really cool, and definitely the ones I'm going to keep them on. And of course, what Scorponok would be complete without his little cyber bee? Very much akin to a episode of Guerrilla Warfare that we are reviewing on our upcoming podcast of That's Just Prime, a Beast Wars podcast. There's a shameless plug for you. And also his original toy. Now, it does store, but what I have just noticed is whilst it plugs on to a certain gorilla, and I'll show you that in a second, it also has electrics in it, because as I took it off, the electrics fell out. And that is where I think this thing comes into it. It is magnetic. Whether I just put it in the back the wrong way, I don't know. I can't get anything to work or light up, and there are some translucent parts. You can imagine the eyes on it being very red, but you can see translucent wings, somewhat dead eyes. But it will plug into his hand as he fires it. There you go, plugs in nicely. It is a shame it is got that dead, non-light up look, but it's very akin to the episode Guerrilla Warfare where he launches it out of his hand, unlike the original toy, of course, where he would just launch it and the entire claw will come off and the claw will become its wings. I do like that it's put in there as a feature, and naturally the wings can cascade down, and the big claws, without him falling over, can cascade away. It means, though, if you took the missiles out from earlier, they are just lying around. So you kind of sacrifice one for the other. But I like it. It's a nice feature. It's kind of his only main gimmick that it comes with. So I'm really pleased they put it in. Right, that's all the accessories. So let's show you the articulation. So we'll start off with the head. Get his arms out of the way. Well, actually, we'll start off with the tail, seeing it's the most prominent point. You kind of get this all the way back. Also, I meant to point out, this section here, this cover, came as an additional accessory, and I really have no idea why. They could have just put that on there, but there you go. Yeah, the tail is pretty good and arches all the way around, but it does come a point where it won't arch anymore. That is as much as you get. Love the tail itself, though. That kind of deep red, I don't think you'll see it. It's not the most reflective. If you get it in hand, you'll know what I mean. Now, head articulation can look up a bit, can look down quite a lot, and can get a full 360 rotation, even with that really beefy shoulder look. He clearly works his traps out, can't say he doesn't. Butterfly hinge on the shoulder, that's more for transformation, but he can get a few more crossbody expressions. Now, this is where probably one thing I encounter You do get shoulder rotation, but you have to kind of move the shoulder pad first. As you see, look there, I can move the shoulder, but then I have to rotate the pad around. You would have thought that would almost be on one piece. That can be a bit annoying, so I do find shoulder placement a bit challenging. Better ratchets out at the side. Nice sounding too. Bicep rotation, but again, that's when you're pulling it out of joint, so don't be surprised if you have to reset him. Elbow bend, all the way up, very, very nice with that. Wrist rotation and opening claws, pincers, whatever you want to call them. Nice, and I do like that they house everything inside. As I say, you kind of have to reset him each time you move him. Don't be at all surprised as this back section for transformation happens that you do kind of tug him here and there, and then where you can see he can come open all the way through. So just be a little mindful. Ab crunch, very nice, very welcome, like that on a friction. Waist rotation, can go all the way around. That's pretty good. Thigh rotation, and this is where mine is very loose on both sides. Not bad, but I don't think it should move that freely, if I'm honest. Let's get his arm out of the way. Only 90 degrees at the bend, or even just shy of. That's a little shame. But nice sounding ratchets as well. Now, ankle rotation, yes. Not at the joint of the foot. I'm trying to see if you see what I mean. You see the yellow pegs out of the side? They're very static still. I mean, it holds a pose. So he will hold a wider stance pretty well. I do think this is really good about this figure. The balance is nice here, even with the added tail, which is as much weight as the rest of the figure. You don't have to do too much resetting. It holds together pretty well. So yeah, quite like how they've done that. And you don't have to forever get him to stand up. Even if you do get him untabbed at the shoulders, it more or less holds together. Okay, on to some comparisons. Let's start off small. Here he is alongside the War for Cybertron Kingdom Scorponok, the deluxe class. I was very disappointed with this, even though it was nice to finally have a toon coloured accurate Scorponok. It's just way too small. And okay, chug to Masterpiece, it's not really a comparison, but it's only one of only few toon accurate comparisons for Scorponok on the market. I was really disappointed with how small this guy is. It just isn't right. And okay, yes, he's a small character. I'm fine with that. But this guy was way off the pace. But anyway, they look quite cool together. He's gone for more of a purpley shade and indigo maybe versus a lavender or soft purple look. But very much in keeping, kept to the source material. So it's quite cool to see these two together. Here he is alongside Takara Masterpiece Black Arachnia. This is tricky, I think, because was Scorponok taller than Black Arachnia? I don't know. They could be much the same. She was always a small character, slender, feminine figure, but Scorponok was never huge. So he's only a shade taller than her, not including the tail. I think that's right, but I also don't know if they've designed, they being Robot Toys, designed Scorponok to be in keeping with the other Takara Masterpieces. They probably would have, to be fair. Yeah, that's iffy for me. I don't know if he should be smaller than her, taller than her. I think this mould, much as I like the look of the character, I think this has got some problems anyway. That's neither here nor there. But it is quite cool getting some Predacon figures out there finally. So yeah, I'm going to have to check the size. I really am not sure if he stood taller than her, shorter than her, same size as her. You start getting around the first incarnation of Tarantulas and Waspinator, they were much of a muchness. Going bigger now, here he is alongside Metagate's Air King, their pterosaur. Love this figure. That's probably right. Pterosaur was a tall bot. This is quite a tall standing pterosaur though. This is quite a tall version, and I think when Takara will get round to it, it will be a shade smaller. Maybe the head will be at the bottom of the jaw, perhaps top of the head to the bottom of the jaw when Takara released theirs. That's all it is difference-wise, but that probably works a bit better. I think I can imagine pterosaur looking down at Scorponok rather than eye to eye. Yeah, I think that works. Two different companies, and it's good to see other companies having a go at it, even though this is probably a gooder version of pterosaur as you find. It hasn't got the best face sculpt, not that you can see from this distance. But yeah, that's a pretty cool comparison nevertheless. Now this might be a bit of an unfair comparison, but I wanted to get a Transart one in there. Of course, these two did not share the same screen at this point in the story. This is Transart's Motor Spider, their Transmetal Tarantulas. But I wanted to have a Tarantulas comparison anyway. So yeah, that works. I guess, but I always felt this version of Tarantula stood a bit taller to Scorponok, but Transmetal to the first season, that's a hard comparison. Hardly any of them stayed around, and Scorponok sadly met his end. Spoilers. But yeah, that's how they look. It is quite a cool comparison, but I think in the fullness of time, probably through Robot Toys, that we will have a Tarantulas of our own coming anyway, and it'll be a bit more in keeping with this figure. But I wanted to get a Trans Art figure in there just to show you something a bit different. We'll rattle through some others. Takara Masterpiece Cheetor, Takara Masterpiece Rhinox, that works really well. Takara Masterpiece Tigatron, Masterpiece Dinobot, Masterpiece Takara Megatron, that looks really good as well. And finishing off with Takara Masterpiece Optimus Primal. Now, I think that scale is off for me. And there's a reason why I wanted to show him at last. Because it works, I guess. Primal was never big, not in the first season, but surely he was much bigger than Scorponok. I mean, he's bigger, but that almost looks a bit too level for me. And this is where I feel maybe this Primal was even a tad too small. I like it. I've always liked this figure. But I think Primal should be considerably bigger than Scorponok. Scorponok does not stand a chance in one-on-one combat with Primal, unless he uses a certain bee. Now, you may remember from a certain episode called Guerrilla Warfare that Scorponok launches his cyber bee that sticks to Primal's chest. And said bee that comes with does stick into the Masterpiece chest. I like that. I will say it's not the best connection because it's probably not the biggest divot or hole. But there is a peg at the back here and it effectively goes on there. Now, it doesn't give a definitive click, but once it's on, it's on. And for those who know about the episode of what it does to Primal and sends him fully ape, well, that's how he looks. And all the weaponry comes out and he goes mad. I like that they threw that in. I like that it connects, but we've started to have that now with figures plugging into each other, as it were, for riding atop of them and things like that. So that's quite cool, though, going from a third party to an official figure. I like that. It is a bit of a dainty connection, and don't be surprised when you pull the bee off that the underside of the bee stays attached, and that's when the electrics found out. That's how I found out. There you go, just happened again, just like that. Okay, let's get this guy transformed up, shall we?
Scorponok, terrorize!
And there he is in his beast mode. Fiddly transformation in steps. There are videos online to help you. There's only 32 steps to the instructions, so I didn't think it would be that bad. And you can more or less work out where things are. You can obviously see the tail and the claws. But broadly speaking, yeah, once you've worked it out, it's clever. It's good. It's intuitive, but it is also a little bit fiddly. You have to do things like knock the thighs or the legs inward to each other to get them to connect, and then pin them to the underside of the scorpion face, and that kind of gets lost in translation with the instructions. But all said and done, surprisingly emotive, very nice and compact. They've done a very solid job for a very toon accurate Scorponok. A transformation into a character, much like with Rhinox with Takara, that was always going to be difficult. And I think they've done a very good job come the end of it. I do really like it. There's not much you can do with it. Yes, you can move the claws and things like that, but articulation isn't really going to be much of a talking point here. But overall, not a bad transformation. Let's get in for a closer look. You can even see the expression of the eyes. That part comes untabbed a little bit, but it's really captured it so well. Moving the shoulders into position, this is probably one gripe I have. The shoulders don't tab in. They can't get past everything in place. At least I haven't worked out how to do it. I think they look like they want to go around and clip into the side of here, but I can't get them past enough to get into a groove to do so. So they kind of more or less sit, and it's fine, but you can end up pushing one thing out of the way. Yeah, unless I'm doing something wrong there. All the same articulation, but his detailing on his face is brilliant. Shouldn't come as any surprise. The legs are very kind of thin, so he's not going to bear any weight on them. He's just more or less going to slide along the floor. The tail doesn't go any further than that, which would be cool if it came all the way down and across, like he was attacking a bit of prey. But otherwise it does the job really well. Now I will show you one bit of articulation he can do. Posable eyebrows. That's a new one. Articulated eyebrows to the show, really. But I think that's quite cool. A nice little additional feature. Other than that, he can move his legs, he can open his claws and get the same pincer movement just like before. But there isn't too much else you can do. He does look really good, very expressionate, and that kind of sheen on the paintwork really works. So overall, they've done a very good job. I'm not going to have too many to show you here, but onto some comparisons. We'd have liked to see this in the show, wouldn't we? Here he is alongside Transart's Vice Poison, their version of a Transmetal Fusor Quick Strike. They are more or less the same character. You know, just obviously different personalities, but they are scorpions with additional Cobra features. Though they do look quite cool. We've never got these two together on the show. It was basically replace one scorpion with another further down the line. But they look pretty good together. Different aspects, different ratios, but they work. They complement one another. Size is in keeping. So yeah, that's a nice one. Well, this is a bit big, keeping alongside Transart with their Dinobot 2, their Transmetal version. Again, they didn't share the same screen, but that is quite a size difference. So yeah, it's just not really much of a comparison, but another beast comparison nevertheless. And finishing off with the chug scale of Megatron Transmetal 2 in his Dragon version, which was the, I think it was Legacy United, if I remember rightly. It's one of the Legacy lines. Quite a change, quite a difference. Again, you're not going to have these two side by side by the time Scorponok came around in the cartoon, but yeah, they look quite cool. They are quite in keeping, and he is second in command after all. This episode is brought to you by That's Just Prime, a Beast Wars podcast run by Carnage Creations and Arrowfire, who you should subscribe to, of course. We review episodes bi-weekly, but also talk about the toys, old and new alike, as well as having guests on the podcast to talk through a fandom that we absolutely love. So what is my view on I'm second in command, can't you tell? It has captured the toon accuracy to a T without harming the figure. It's a complicated transformation, and I will forgive anyone tackling these arachnid-like transformations, particularly in beast forms, rather than when it's jagged or stylized into a Cybertronian mode. Getting into an earth-based animal, reptile, insectoid, is always going to be difficult. Now, yes, all right, you can tell legs on the underside, and it kind of makes up the face, and his arms are his arms anyway. So a lot of it was done for him, plus the massive tail that hangs off the back of it. But it's still hard to get this smooth image, and I think this is where the likes of Tarantulas, maybe Black Arachnia as well, or even Quick Strike. I do think it has a couple of things that could have been polished a little bit more. I think the accessories are fine. I would have maybe liked another head sculpt that was showing a more chattering teeth that we have seen from the cartoon, or even just a nervous one, or one that he knows that he done f***ed up. But other than that, would you give him a mega cannon? There's not much else that you can give Scorponok. He is kind of the firing rockets and the cyber beam that actually attaches to Primal's chest from the Takara release. That's a really nice touch. I think things could be polished a little bit more. You can tell that there isn't too much weight here. A lot of the weight is the tail. The rigidness is around here, so it's not carrying a lot of die cast. Then again, you're not paying for it, and I suppose if you want that, you will pay for it if Fans Toys ever decided to go into Beast Wars. But it's not here in abundance, not that it needs to. The balancing I do like. I do like that in robot mode, that with this long tail, you haven't got to do much to keep it steady, and it doesn't want to topple too much, not like some other figures I've held. So I was quite pleased with the tension on the joints, tension in the right places. The transformation is good, it's clever, it's getting ever so close to being annoying, but not quite. There is an intuitive side to it. I think the magnet was a funny choice, assuming that's for the Cyber Bee, but as I said in the review of that section, is the fact that that Cyber Bee would come detached if it got stuck to Primal's chest, and then this small electric bit fell out, and there's nothing in the instructions to say that's what it's for. But it's the only bit of mechanical, electrical engineering in this figure, so it must be for that. But again, no mention in the instructions. Scale is probably right, but I was a bit concerned when I put them alongside Black Arachnia and again with Primal. But those two aside, I think it scales with the other figures just perfectly. I'm intrigued to see these other two releases from Tarantulas and Waspinator. I just like that with Transart now out of the game, that we've got someone other than Takara throwing out Beast Wars figures. The Predacons have been lacking from Takara. They will get round to them, but they are not exactly flying off the shelves. So in the meantime, this guy will do for now. I can see Takara releasing something very similar to this, if I'm being honest. I could maybe see it being a bit more, I don't know, can you get more toon accurate than this? Probably not. But I can just see something being a little bit more polished and possibly having a bit more weight to it as well. Not necessarily in diecast. But for the here and now, I really like what it does. And if you're a fan of this character or just a fan of the Predacons from Season 1, it's a very much a good pickup. The price is more than fair for it. Based on this, I give this guy 4.5 Rodimus Star Badges. again, just does very few things wrong. And there's just a few things I would have liked to get a perfect score out of it. I do think it could be better, maybe when Takara get round to it, but much like with Metagate's Air King, this will do the job for now. And there we go, that is my review of Robot Toys RT-D01 Lord Venatagon. Could have come up with an easier name. I'll put some photos up at the end. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and hit the subscribe button because I will see you on the next one.